Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Nicole and today we are looking at new build homes, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So as you know, I've been working through a new build home process myself, and I gotta say it has been taking a lot longer than I thought we had signed up for. And there's been a lot going on recently that has honestly gotten me pretty down. So I think that today is a great day to go over some of the positives, some of the things that you should know about, and some of the some of the negatives, just some things to think about so that if you are thinking about going through this process yourself, you know as much as possible and you feel as prepared as you possibly can. If that sounds good to you, if it's something you're interested in, keep on watching, give this video a like. Let's get into it. So initially I had been holding off on doing kind of a part 2 to the pre-construction one that I had done a couple videos ago. I'd had something on my calendar since the beginning of December, which was going to be our pre-drywall walkthrough. Wanted to give you all, the step-by-step guide for what we personally went through, and just some things just like these where it's good to know what you should be prepared for, what questions you should ask, and again, just what our experience was, so you get a little bit of a behind the curtain if you have not gotten to that piece yet. Now, like I said, that has been on my content calendar for a month and a half now. And the reason we have not gotten around to that is because we haven't had it done yet. It is not even on this radar right now. Hopefully it'll happen this month, but again, we're already about 6 weeks behind schedule there, after having already been so behind schedule just in the grand scheme of things. So hopefully we'll be getting that out to you soon. But in the meantime, yeah, some positives, some negatives, and some kind of in-betweens just to get you as prepared as possible. So let's start off with those positives, the good of having a new build home. If it is a new construction, it is completely yours. You're the only people who will have lived there. It's being built for you. So this means that we're looking at customization. These are going to be things that you have personally worked on with your builder. These are things that you've picked out on your own that you get to put your personal touch on. Now, while every builder will be slightly different, you get to customize a lot of options. Now, what options they have may be a little bit different builder to builder, but you're the one picking those out, from the cabinet colors to where things are positioned to if you have, say, in your kitchen drawers that roll out, any of those deep pots and pans drawer. So if you have that kind of forethought to go over and curate what your ideal, say, kitchen setup looks like, you can kind of have that kind of free flow with your builder to build it out exactly how it is that you want it to look. You're picking out your countertops, you're picking out your hardware, your sink fixtures. There are just so many things that you get to have that say in, have your input, that you don't get if you're just purchasing a home that is already built. Now, a lot of these things you do kind of tend to go builder grade on, like that hardware, like some of these other fixtures, because it's cheaper to get something elsewhere, or you find something that you really love somewhere else. So it just makes more sense to save money on the builder side and then invest where you want to, because they are easy swaps. But if the builder does have those things that you do love and they're for a really good cost, you can go ahead and customize so much, so that when you do take those first steps into your home, it is exactly what it is that you were looking for. If it's new, that means it's going to be completely up to today's codes, today's standards, something that you might not see in some older houses. So I don't remember the exact date, it was 78 or 76. You have to be aware of lead-based paint because it was still allowed up until that point. So things like that aren't going to happen. You know that we're going to look at more energy efficiencies. So all of your windows, some of your appliances, everything's going to be a little bit more towards that energy efficiency mindset that, again, you might not have in different homes, either because it just wasn't standard at the time, or the current or previous owners just didn't take that into account and didn't make those upgrades. But you won't have to worry about that. Upgrades are something that if you're trying to sell your current home, you may need to do that. You may need to get the wood color refinished. You may need to put in a nicer countertop option. But if you are looking at those options when you are in your building phase, they're already going to be there. So it's not something you have to think about later on. Now, obviously times change, so you may need to switch things out if you're moving 20 years from now, but for the time being, you have the most up to date. Your builder will have a preferred lender, so typically, everybody needs to get a mortgage. Now, maybe you're somebody who can pay everything up front, which case, congratulations. Let me know how you did that. But For most of us, we do need to go through that kind of mortgage lender process, and they will have some incentives to help you with that. So maybe it'll be, we'll finish, the basement, or we'll give you X amount towards closing costs. Sometimes it'll be a couple of different things. So there are certain incentives that you might get through your builder that you wouldn't get if you were just purchasing the home, from somebody else right now. You'll also get some type of short-term warranty. So that's usually about that 1 year mark is when that expires. But up until then, they'll come in and they'll fix the nail pops. They'll make sure that if your microwave stopped working or there was an issue with your flooring, they do have those kind of built in because it is brand new. They don't quite know what could go wrong when the house is settling. So, everything gets built up and there is going to be some kind of leeway and wiggle room for that house to settle, which is generally when you do start to get those nail pops. So they'll come in and they'll fix those things. Now, it's not a very long warranty, and unfortunately, it doesn't necessarily cover, at the 1 year mark is not when everything's going to go wrong, but you do have that coverage that you wouldn't get with a home that you're just buying today. But in general, there's a lot of positives here. You get to pick out the interior, you get to pick out the exterior. It's probably a new neighborhood if it's something that you're building, so it's not only you, but a lot of other people around you will be going through the same process. And I personally hope that will be a little bit of a bonding experience to see what everybody else kind of went through, because it has been such a trying time. But you get to pretty much build out your dream. Now, just note here, I am talking about going through a builder. I'm not talking about necessarily going through, if you're legitimately building your home, you're the one planning out all of the floor plan and you're the one picking out absolutely everything. That can be a little bit different. So this is from the perspective of going through an established builder. Now, with the good, unfortunately, does also come the bad. This first one can kind of go into the good or the bad category, which is why I wanted to put it first here, is your options may not be as endless as you think going in. Now, from the positive side, you don't want to have that analysis paralysis. You don't want to go in there and be so overwhelmed in the design center that you can't pick something because there are too many options. So from the good side, that can be very helpful. But from the bad side, they might not have all the options that you were hoping for. So I'll put up a picture here. This type of, I call it a natural wood kitchen. Wood is natural, so that doesn't really make sense, but that's kind of what makes sense in my head. This is something that is very, very in right now. It is a trend that you will continue to see throughout this year, and I'm going to guess a couple years to come before that eventually starts to fade out again. But I think this is beautiful. Design centers run a couple years behind, so I've been to my design center too many times. It's exhausting. But my sister-in-law just purchased a townhouse, so excited for her. So I got to go to her design center appointment there, completely different builder, but got to see, what their offerings are as well. And nobody that I've seen personally, is offering that type of wood, that type of character. You have a lot of what's been popular, so you still have a lot of the cherries, which is just not something that you see a lot today. They're just now starting to get like the navy blue, which has been popular for a couple of years now, but I also feel like it's not as popular as it was if they had started offering that a couple years ago. There's none of those greens yet that are just everywhere. There's not a lot of those warm beiges. It's still a lot of either darker woods or you're looking at like whites and grays. So we know that grays are kind of fading out as well. Like we're still doing some gray cabinetry, so it's not completely gone. And again, if you love something, who cares what the trend is? Who cares what other people are doing? You have to do what you like. But again, so they just seem to be a couple years behind the trends in that perspective, so you might not get exactly what you want there. Some of the things from the outside of the house, so your exterior, are dependent on your neighbor's choices. So if you are not the first one in and you really want a certain elevation or you want a certain color of siding or shutters or door, sometimes the builder kind of doesn't let you do that because they don't want the two houses right next to each other to look exactly the same. So I know that from our last home, we were the first one in our little cul-de-sac, so we got free reign on the color choices, the elevations, all of that. Now, when our neighbor moved in, he was like, oh man, that's the color scheme I really wanted, but we were told we couldn't have that because you guys had already chosen that. So sorry, but it's just something to keep in mind. You might have exactly what you want in your head. It doesn't necessarily mean you can have it just from again, they don't want it to look like they've just copied and pasted every single house. So you do have to be willing to be a little bit flexible, which is not the end of the world. But when you go in thinking, I'm going to build my dream, nobody can stop me, there might be a little speed bump along the way. When you're going through and you get to see that big map of all the lots that have been sold, what's available, what's to come as they expand the neighborhood, you also notice that some lots are much more appealing than others, and that's the one that you want. It's got a bigger backyard, it sits further back off the road, it backs to trees, it's waterfront, whatever it is, that's gonna come at a premium. So lot premiums are something that when you're going through the website and you see the base price for all the housing, that does not include that lot premium. It obviously doesn't include a lot of things, which we'll get into in a minute, but something else to keep in mind, the land itself. So speaking of kind of hidden costs, everything you see when you go through the model is, not everything, that was dramatic, but so much of what you see and what you really like there is not included in the base price. The base price is going to be, the lowest grade carpet, the least amount of customization in your cabinetry. It's going to be, all the, brushed nickel or chrome light fixtures that maybe not quite what you're looking for. So basically, so much of what you choose is just not included in that base price. So even though that price can look very appealing, it does not tell the full story. And of course, when you walk through that model and you fall in love with the extra height to the ceiling, with the under cabinet lighting, with the beautiful matte black or antiqued brass handles, you're going to have to pay for all of that. Any of those extra rooms, so sometimes they'll have like an optional sunroom to the side, or the option for the finished basement will be in the model. That's all extra for the most part. So it's just something you have to keep in mind going in. The base price is not near, for the most part, the price that you're gonna be seeing at the end. So you'll need to go through and really, if you are working on a tight budget, just keep in mind that base price does not tell the full story. So you've closed on your home, you've got the keys, you're ready to move in, you've signed your signature a million times at at closing. There are a couple things that are going to be kind of missing from your house that you also have to be aware of. So one of the things that just really was an aha moment for me for our last house was when you walk in and you realize there's no blinds or anything on the windows, there's no lights in some of the rooms. These are things that you have to do after the fact that, again, I just really want you to be as prepared as possible going in. Light fixtures, they'll have some, obviously there's not going to be just complete darkness, but there's gonna be some light fixtures that you're gonna have to do yourself. You're not going to have any privacy from a blinds or shutters perspective on your windows. You'll probably need something like a battery backup for your sump pump. We need to do a whole house generator. So since we are on well, the pump is electric. So if we ever lost power, we would lose water as well because there's nothing to generate that pressure to get the water into the home. So we have to buy a very expensive generator. So it's just all of these things that aren't included in the house that you have to have, that you just have to be prepared for later. Unfortunately, we've come to the least fun part of this, the ugly. So we've also experienced a lot of this just because it is a different time than usual, but who knows how long these supply chain issues are going to go. I feel like it's going to be affecting us for just a long time. I mean, we're already a couple years into, unprecedented times, and it's not going to go away overnight. So if you are thinking about purchasing a home, these are things that probably for a couple of years, I'm no expert. So please don't think that, this is solid or completely factual here, but the feeling that I'm getting from what I've seen and from talking to our builder and just from other people who work in the industry, this has the possibility to affect us for just quite a long time. So these supply chain issues that are causing people to have to push back dates further and further, that are causing things to go either out of stock or they just can't get a hold of because they're still stuck on a cargo ship somewhere. There's just a lot more things that can mess up your progress that we never really had to worry about up until this point. So we're looking at delays. Now, obviously, delays have always happened. I mean, we spoke with one of our neighbors when we went to our very first, walkthrough of the model, ran into somebody on the way out, had a wonderful conversation with her about the house that they were building. They were actually the first ones in the neighborhood, but they went through kind of a nightmare situation where before that, their home that they had purchased in a couple neighborhoods over, it was just never built. And this is pre-COVID and all of that. So this was just the builder just I don't know all of the details, but they never got their home. The builder, I think, typically has about 2 years to get the home started. I don't know if that's across the industry. I believe that's what our builder does, and I think that's what her previous builder, one of the biggest ones in the area, I believe that's what they do as well. And they just never got their home. So delays are nothing new. I'm not trying to say that we have any type of unique scenario from that standpoint, but when you get your initial timeline and you're very hopeful and maybe you even pad a month or two here or there just to make sure that you have a very realistic time frame, there's no guarantee. So we this week will hit our, tomorrow we'll hit our 1 year in this apartment. We had initially signed up, we came here because it was one of the only places that, one, allowed pets, but two, allowed for short-term leasing. So we initially signed up for a 6-month lease, and again, it was the only place in the area that we could really do that. And surprise, we didn't have to do that. But because we went through that lease term, we went month to month for a little bit, and then they strong-armed us hard into signing another lease term. I just got the email the other day now that that's coming to the end, and they're like, oh, hey, here's your options for moving forward. And of course, every time this happens, the price goes up. So this place is really not worth the amount of money that we're already paying for it, if I'm being completely honest. And now we're going to have to pay even more money just to stay here because we weren't able to lock in for the year because we didn't think we had to. So there's hidden costs there. That means that our storage unit costs for all the furniture from our old house that's just waiting for us to move it into a new place, that's costing us money every single month. Mortgage rates are going up again. If we were hoping to move in over the summer of 2021 and mortgage rates were fantastic at that point, the market is not looking as friendly. So things are going up. We've been speaking with our lender, we've been speaking with a couple just to kind of get our options. Rate locks are really difficult, so you can do up to a 6-month lock. And again, anything financial, I just want to make 100% clear, this is from my own experience. This is by no means financial advice. This is by no means, across the board. So this is just from my personal experience. So just please keep that in mind. But what we found through our 2 lenders that we've kind of been speaking with just to get a pulse on the market is that a 6-month is kind of like that longest lock situation. Now, for the pleasure of locking in for 6 months, you also owe a lot of money. We're talking into the thousands of dollars. So just to lock, long-term rate lock, it's gonna cost you money. Now, with both of the ones we've spoken to, you would get that money back at closing. But if you didn't go with that lender, that money is just gone. There's just all of these costs that we just weren't anticipating. And it's kind of scary right now. Again, if we had moved in when we thought, June, July of last year, our rates were looking fantastic. And now we're getting to the point where we're having this anxiety about our mortgage cost is going to look like because it is so different than what it should have been, essentially. I talked a little bit about our pre-drywall meeting. Again, we are 6 weeks beyond what was anticipated for that. And again, it's not on the calendar yet, and we don't know when it will be. So we have projections from our builder about still our estimated close date, but initially it was June, July 21, and then it was probably October-ish, and then it was, we hope by the end of the year, and then it was end of January, beginning of February, and now we're mid-January, and we are not even at the halfway point of having the home built, so it's a little frustrating. And that uncertainty can really start to weigh on you. So I, again, just want you to be as prepared as possible going into a situation like this. Have all the facts, do all the research that you can, because it is not a fun time right now for us. I'm hoping that, April is legitimate, but I also feel like we can't quite count on that. Outside of any type of delays or anything, at some point you get into your house, and again, we talked about the house settling and the nail pops. That is something that's going to happen, and you don't quite know what that's going to look like until it does happen. So nail pops, absolutely, it's going to, but any type of settlement cracks, that's not something that's all going to necessarily happen in that first year. So a lot of the warranties that I've seen where they'll come back for free and fix these things. A year's not that long, and I feel like a lot of the issues that we had previously happen just outside of that 1 year mark or continue on through the first few years of living there. So you do have some protections, and that is great, but it's not quite the breadth of protection that I personally would like to see. Customization is obviously something that we get very excited about for the new build home, but you also have to put a lot of thought and effort at the beginning when maybe you're not quite sure what it all is supposed to look like by the time you get to, say, this point. So it's too late to do any changes because it's all been approved and the building is going up. But at this point, it's just something like, oh, I wish we'd put an electrical socket here or there, or maybe just get to the point where you're like, oh, we should have done this, done that, whatever it is. There's so many things to think through that by the time the building's going up, it's too late. And having that feeling of, I could have done it if I just thought of it, like we had the options and I just didn't think it through. So that can kind of weigh on you a little bit. So again, I would just say do all the research that you can, really think through every single room. How are you going to use it? Even if you don't have the furniture, think through what the function of the room is, think through, kind of fill out what you think the room would look like with your furniture so that you can have things in place as much as will be true to what it will look like in the end, because you might come across some things that you just didn't think about, and you want to catch those as early as possible so that when you're going through your options, you get it right the first time, so you're not left with that kind of regret afterward. Now, other times maybe you did think of it and cost got in the way. So windows are very expensive, and maybe you went in thinking you wanted all of the optional windows. That can get very pricey very fast. Or maybe, you had your dream kitchen, but then you get to the design center and they show you what that's going to look like, and you realize you have to start making some concessions and you can't get your full dream vision. That's kind of upsetting too, because it's just there out of your reach. You could have it all built in right now, so when you walk in those doors, it's there, but cost gets in the way. And we obviously have to be very realistic. We don't want to get into a home that we can't pay for. So it's just something, these things that you have to think about, that you have to think through, working within your budget and seeing what could have been. It can be a little bit tricky, it can be a little bit difficult. So this is kind of that ugly side of that customization. And finally, talking a little bit about VOCs here. Now, I am not incredibly well versed here, so I would highly suggest that you speak to somebody who really knows what they're talking about here. But VOCs are volatile organic compounds that need some type of off-gassing time. So this typically comes from paint, from any type of engineered flooring, from carpets. You can get it from your furniture. So anytime you walk in, you kind of get that smell, that scent. That's what off-gassing is. And it's just releasing these chemical compounds into the air as they off-gas. Now, in a new home, there will be a little bit of a time period when obviously you're not living there and it will have some time to breathe. But this process, from again, what I've seen, looks like it can take years. Now, I'm not saying it's something to panic about, it's just something to be aware of. And again, I am by no means an expert here, but if that is something you're concerned about, new build homes seem to have a little bit more of that because everything is new and it hasn't had that time to off-gas as much as if you're getting vintage pieces or something like that. So just a quick note on that, since I did just mention it, buying some vintage or recycled pieces rather than new, you won't have to worry about that as much. Things like wool carpet or solid hardwood are going to be items that won't have that, but those are also very expensive. So there's so much to look through, to think through. And again, make sure that you are as prepared as possible going in so that hopefully nothing catches you off guard. So that covers everything for today. Again, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I do hope that we get that pre-drywall out soon, just because it is that next step towards finishing the house. Again, about 4 months in from breaking ground to now, and it should have been a 2.5 month process. So we're just hoping that the second half doesn't take quite that long. If you are looking to build a new home or you're just curious about this, I do hope that it helped. If it did, please give this video a like, go ahead and subscribe. Can't wait to see you in the next video. Until next time, bye.